Joining me now, Stephen Moore. Steve is a longtime economist and economic advisor to President Trump, and he's also the author of the new book out, Trumponomics. Stephen Moore, great to have you back, sir.
Good morning. Great to be with you. And it is so. Do you see the consumer confidence numbers, by the way, that came out yesterday? Highest consumer confidence in 18 years. I mean, this is an unbelievable boom we're in right now.
And Steve, tell me about the wage increases, 3.1%. Nobody's talking about this either. Tell us about that.
Well, look, first of all, is the book the book points out, you know, we wrote this book, and I wrote it with my originally it was going to be the three of us, Laffer and I and Larry Kudlow, but of course Larry then got the job as being the chief economist for Trump over at the White House, and they asked me to come on over, and I said, look, I got to finish this book, you know, and so we had a lot of fun writing it, and it's basically, you know, about our experiences helping Trump grow this economy, writing the plan with him, and people always ask me, well, how did Trump do it? You know, how has Trump caused this economic miracle? And my answer to that is very simple. This is a guy who is pro-business. He is a businessman. We replaced a community organizer with a businessman who knows how to make a profit, who knows how to meet a payroll, who knows how to, you know, grow a business, and, you know, he's one of our most successful businessmen. And he's brought those principles to Washington, the White House, and that's the reason the economy, which was growing at 1.5% when Obama left office, 1.5%, which is barely staying out of recession, the economy is now growing at, you know, close to 4%. It's an amazing revival. And I saw the president the other day, by the way, at the White House and at the Rose Garden ceremony he had, and I just had a few minutes to talk to him. I said, Mr. President, this is working better than even we thought it would when we drew up the plans. And he just smiled and he said, you ain't seen nothing yet. So, you know, the economy isn't slowing down. This is going to be, you know, a very, very strong, you know, economy for, I think, several years to come.
Okay, so let's talk, Steve, a little bit about small businesses and how they've been benefited by this economy, and how does that translate into the midterms?
Well, look, you know, when we put the kind of gemstone of the Trump agenda, of course, has been the tax cut, you know, and by the way, it's amazing to me. Democrats are running against the tax cut. I mean, the tax cut has been such a phenomenal success in terms of bonuses, you mentioned the 3% wage increases for workers. That's one of the biggest wage increases we've seen in 20 years. This was always about, every meeting we had with Donald Trump about the tax plan, he always says, I want to make sure that this benefits two groups of people. Small businesses. He said, look, I understand we got to cut our corporate tax, but every small business has to get a tax cut too. And the other thing he always said is, let's make sure that this benefits middle-class Americans. He said, you know, it's all about how do we help middle-class Americans, you know, improve their standing. And that's what I think Trump is so pleased about, is that, you know, when you include bonuses, overtime pay that people are getting, the fact that we have the lowest unemployment rate in, 50 years,
right.
This is what's benefiting middle-class, working-class Americans, the kind of people who took a risk and voted for Trump in the first place.
Steve, tell us about your new book, Trumponomics.
Well, it's a first-hand account. You know, people say, I don't want to buy that book. I don't like economics. I'm afraid of economics. This isn't really an economics book. It's more, by the way, you can read it in 3 or 4 nights. It's just basically the story of how Trump, you know, performed this economic miracle and our personal experiences with him. It's all written in the first person, you know, in terms of how Trump is one of the most interesting people I've ever met in my life. I mean, he is larger than life. He's very gracious. He's very fun to be around. You know, sometimes people think, you know, sometimes in public he acts like a jerk, but in private, he's one of the most gracious, you know, attentive people. He cares so much about working class Americans. Every decision he makes is going to be, how is this going to affect the guy who works in, you know, Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, or Rockford, Illinois, or Flint, Michigan, places that were left behind and never really felt a recovery. And that was really the whole reason that he won the election, is because all these people had been forgotten about, under Obama, who had never seen a recovery. Those are the people that these policies were designed to, you know, for example, the coal miners. You know, Hillary Clinton ran around the country saying, I'm going to put every coal miner out of a job. And Trump went to those areas and said, no, I'm not going to kill your job. I'm going to make sure you've got a job and you keep that job and you get more money in your wallet. I mean, that's a very different attitude.
Yeah, it is. We're with Stephen Moore. He is the long-term economist. He's also the architect of President Trump's and Canada Trump's economic plan. He just came out with a new book, Trumponomics, and you want to read that. Stephen, let me ask a tough question, if I may, and then I'm going to get to the midterm. So the Trump economic plan was very, very easy for someone like me who is a protectionist. I didn't like TPP. I fought against NAFTA back in the day. I hated that. I hated the Korean trade deal. I'm a protectionist. I never met a tariff I didn't like, okay? So that's easy for me to embrace the Trump trade policies, okay? Somebody like yourself, though, who is a free trader, how did you reconcile this?
Well, that's a great question. We deal a lot about that in the book, because when Trump asked Larry Kudlow and I and Art Laffer to work with him, the first thing we said is, we can't work for you, Donald. We called him Donald back then. He wasn't president. Because we're for free trade and you're a protectionist. And, free trade is one of the pillars of economic growth. And I remember he got angry at us and said, well, I'm not a protectionist. He said, I believe in, international commerce and international trade. I'm a businessman. I understand, we want open markets. But he said, look, these other countries aren't playing by the rules. He said, it's not a level playing field. They are not living up to their agreements and they're playing us like fools. And you know what? Sometimes not living up to their end of the bargain. And, these countries like China and Japan and, the Europeans were charging much higher tariffs than we were. And so, Trump is using this billy club, this stick of threatened tariffs to get these other countries to behave themselves and lower their tariffs and open up their markets to Americans. Now, the one thing I disagree with strongly of Trump, and we talk about this in the book, I think the steel tariffs are a total disaster. I think they are not creating jobs for Americans. They're actually causing a loss of jobs because it's made steel more expensive here, and that means, for companies like Caterpillar or our manufacturing companies, it's harder for them to compete in the global market. So I'm not a sycophant. Things he does, I think, are fantastic. Some of the things I disagree with. Now, you may like the steel tariffs, but I don't think they're working.
I love the steel tariffs, to be honest with you, because you can't be a 21st century economy and not be able to produce steel because other countries produce it cheaper. And so that's just a false choice that we have. And you got the Chinese dumping steel in the U.S. They've been doing it forever. They subsidize it. So you're trying to compete with a communist government subsidizing the cost of production, dumping it in the United States, and paying a 1% tariff tax when it comes over on the ship. And that's basically to take it off the dock. And so,
well, we can agree to disagree on that one. I just think, look, steel is the input for everything that we produce. Not everything, but most of the manufacturing is made with steel.
Right.
And if we have to build stuff with, look how it's hurting our auto industry. The autos are made out of steel, right? And if you can buy a car in Japan with 20% lower cost steel, that puts our auto companies at a disadvantage. But look, overall, what Trump has done is created the best job market ever. We're going to have another jobs report tomorrow. You know how many jobs they're expecting? Another 200,000. We're running out of workers in this country. Trump is creating so many jobs, we don't have enough workers to fill them all.
I know, it's unbelievable.
It's a great time to be looking for a job, folks. If you're looking for a job and you got any skill, you can get a job in 24 hours. This is an amazing market. I told my kids this. Get off your butts and get a job. Come on. They're out there.
It is amazing. And the number that no one sees is the number of people that are entering the job market that were not factored in, Stephen. They gave up after the recession. They couldn't get a job. There were 5 people applying for 2 jobs. They just left the job market. Now they're coming back in, and that's also creating a tax base. Why isn't this going to translate into the midterms? Why are Republicans at risk of losing the House when people are going to vote on Tuesday?
They are the most incompetent group of people. They couldn't sell water in a desert. You know, they couldn't set up a lemonade stand in the desert and sell the stuff. I mean, here we got the strongest economy in 30 years. We got all these numbers are just off the charts in terms of, how people feel about the direction of the country. And yet Republicans don't talk about it. They don't talk about the economy. They don't talk about the tax cut, which has put $2,000 into the pockets of every middle-class family in America. I mean, I get so frustrated with Republicans. How can they not be, and by the way, folks, if you vote for these Democrats, they're going to repeal the tax cut. I mean, they're going to set us right back to where we had 1.5% growth under Obama.
It is mind-boggling, isn't it?
It
Absolutely.
is. I mean, there's a reason we call the Republican Party the stupid party, because they just can't sell a message. I mean, you got to give credit. One good thing about Democrats is that they're very disciplined in their message. They keep saying the same thing over and over again. Free health care for everybody, minimum wage increase, blah, blah, blah. They don't deviate from their message. Tax cuts for the rich, which was complete nonsense. Right. The middle class benefited from the tax cuts, but they keep saying it over and over again. Republicans can't seem to get a message out, and even though they got a phenomenal record, and Trump is the only one who's talking about this stuff. Have you noticed that?
Yes. Yes, the only one at his rallies.
By the way, I got to put a word in for my good friend Dave Bratt in Virginia. Well, a great congressman, great conservative, and he's even in the polls. What? You're going to throw Dave Bratt out? He's the guy who gave you the tax cut. He's the one who's worked with Trump on all of this stuff. A great conservative, a pro-business guy who understands the economy, and I don't understand why he's not up by 20 points.
I know, right? I think he's going to win, but it's going to be tight.
I
Stephen,
think
I'm out of
he's
time.
Going to win. He's fantastic. He's one of the great, true, principled conservatives out there.
Stephen, thank you. I'm out of time. I'm going to pass
Anytime.
that to Dave.
Let's talk after the election.
Trumponomics, Stephen Moore, John Fredericks Radio Network. Stay with us.